Hello, classmates, and welcome to this debate. I want you to imagine that you're living in the days of Hammurabi, just doing your normal things, minding your own business, when all of a sudden, someone comes around and accuses you of doing a very serious crime. You may be scared or frightened because you think you may be punished, but luckily due to Hammurabi's fair code of laws, you will not be punished, and the other person will be. Today we're going to prove why Hammurabi's laws were fair.
Go ahead.
Imagine living in a city where you are scared and feel like any little mistake that you make will get you an unfair punishment. Imagine you are a slave and someone comes up and harms you. The man that harms you doesn't get a fair punishment. This is why Hammurabi's code was unfair, and they were unfair for different social classes.
The king's laws were fair because it protected everyone in the empire.
Ensure that evidence was important.
Hammurabi's laws prevented others from being harmed.
Hammurabi's code was unfair because the punishments were too harsh for the crimes committed. For example, law number 7 states that if a son strikes his father, they shall cut off his fingers. The punishments here in this case is accepted because chopping off someone's fingers is forever, and the pain that the father had felt was temporary. Everyone deserves a chance everyone makes mistakes and deserves a chance to grow without the consequences of the mistakes they had made along the way.
Hammurabi's code was unfair because it only focused on what the woman provides for a man, not the other way around. For example, Law 128. If a man takes a woman to wife but does not intercourse with her, that woman is no wife to him. This code of law is unfair because it only provides what the woman has to do for the man, and not what the man has to do or provide for a woman.
Hammurabi's code was unfair because some of the laws were not equal to the punishments. Law 198 states that if he pokes out an eye of a freedman or breaks the bone of a freedman, he shall pay 1 gold mine. This law is unfair because another law says that if he breaks another man's bone, or his bone shall be broken. This is unfair because why can't the man who got his bone broken break the man's bone? Is it because he's a freed man? That's not fair to the freed man, because if he was a freed man and broken his bone, he would have been put to death.
So what if, with the father and the son law, what if the son didn't even have a reason to strike his father and he was just doing it for no reason? He was just mad at his father for some stupid reason that didn't make any sense. There will be a reason to cut off his fingers because he shouldn't hit his father like that. And that was very rude and shouldn't have happened.
The laws that were put in place were to protect the people that were in Hammurabi's land, and the laws were fair because, for example, when you said if a son abuses his father and the son gets his fingers cut off, how is that fair if the son was being abused every day?
Hammurabi had evidence. Hammurabi didn't have evidence all the time. Sometimes you didn't even need evidence for crimes that were committed.
The laws made sure that everyone was protected and no one was harmed. The laws did make sure everyone was protected, but it did not make sure anyone was harmed. As it states in the laws, number 7, woman alive his daughter shall be put to death. These made the laws no one was harmed false.
At this point, after all the things my team has discussed, I believe that everything is true about all these code laws being fair. We have proved many evidence, and also we provided many examples to have come to this conclusion. These laws may not seem fair to everyone, but it keeps their environment safe and at peace. Laws is a very important thing to your home, so everything is not chaotic and unfair. This is the end of our academic debate, and I would like to thank you all for listening.
Hammurabi's code was unfair because it was unrealistic and it tried to keep people safe, but it didn't make sure nobody was harmed. Therefore, they were selfish and, unrealistic.
So imagine, you're a lower rank, just walking around the town. Then suddenly, you accidentally bump into a higher rank, and then you apologize. The higher rank starts arguing with you, you just ignore him and walk away. Then suddenly you feel a tap on your shoulder. Then the higher rank tries to attack you, but then you start to fight back. So then the soldier breaks up the fight and asks you, the lower rank, what rank are you on? You say you're living in poverty. So then you said you cannot, the higher rank that you just attacked is a retired general from the military. And then you asked, do I get a punishment or anything? So he said yes. She said, get dressed in a robe and meet by the pole in the middle of the town. So now everybody's here to see you publicly. He says, you know you broke a code of law, right? There's a code of law. And said, yes, on number 1, if you attack a higher rank and you're a lower rank, you get 60 slashes with an ox tip, which hurts. So then after that, you can barely walk, barely for your legs. So then when you go home, you realize these laws are only to benefit the higher ranks, not to benefit everybody. How are we supposed to defend ourselves if we get punished and not the higher rank does? We think this is unfair, because why do I get punished when the higher ranks attack me first? I'm just a lower rank defending myself. That's not fair. Why do I get punished for somebody else's actions? I was just defending myself. That's unfair. It doesn't make any sense. What if you punch me and I defend myself? You're a teacher, so you're a higher rank. I'm a student, so I'm a lower rank. So then I get punished. I get suspended or expelled. How does that fair? And you get a lighter punishment, no punishment at all. So how does that sound fair?
Would you live in a reckless place with no rules? I certainly would not. A place with no rules is like a McDonald's with no burgers or fries. Hammurabi's rules brought order and control so much that they built one of the first empires. Hammurabi just wanted the best for people to make everyone organized and happy. Hammurabi's rules united his empire like a family. It was obvious that the laws were created to make peace throughout the whole empire. The rules were made as equally for everyone, no matter the race and gender. Also, laws even applied to Hammurabi. Even slaves had rights, and they could buy back their freedom if they had enough money. No other empire at the time had such laws and freedom. Hammurabi's laws were needed because if the rules didn't exist, people would have been rebellious and they would have gone insane. People wouldn't have done their jobs and would have lost all their progress. Today is the day we show the world why Hammurabi's code is fair.
Let's say you're a boater. You're building a house, just there, doing your job, not doing anything, and trying to make money for your family. And then suddenly, the house falls on the owner. You get punished by death. How is that fair if you didn't want to kill the man? You didn't want to kill him, you just built your house trying to make a living, and then he died. Eyes after, let's say, an accident, an earthquake, or something like that.
Many of the laws are sections. Law 129 says, if a woman flaunders another man other than her husband, that the two shall be tied up and thrown into a river. This law was unfair because why they kill them for this of publicly shamed or outcast?
If a man lies in a case involving a death sentence, he shall be put to death. The judge wouldn't know what data is false or true. For example, say if someone accuses you of theft and supposedly has a witness. You know you didn't steal, but the opposition has the most convincing argument, and you're killed for no reason. Now, in my opinion, I feel like this isn't fair. Because they didn't have cameras, they didn't have fingerprints, they didn't have trackers back then, really. So if you're the witness, but they have the more convincing argument, then clearly the judge is gonna believe them. But you don't know if the judge has a relationship with them, or it's like a close friend, or anything. Or like they might have hung out with each other one time, you know?
For our group's first argument why Hammurabi's code of laws are fair, it's because they were made by the gods. For example, in Law 249, Hammurabi states, in Law 249, if a man hires an ox and the ox is struck down by God, then the man shall swear by God and he'll be considered guiltless. This showed that Hammurabi wanted the laws to abide by God. And if he were to lie to God, the people would demand that he would be punished because they loved and respected the gods so dearly. A human couldn't go against the gods. A human wouldn't want to go against the gods. Remember, religion was a huge part of these people's lives at the time. So, in the people's eyes, these laws that were made by the gods, they look really fair as God, because they were made by the gods. So I think that's why they were fair.
One of the many reasons Hammurabi's code was fair is that it stopped crimes and put order in place. For example, Law 22 states, if anyone is committing a robbery and is caught, they shall be put to death. This indicates that in order to have a peaceful society where people have to ask for things instead of stealing from their own family, friends, and neighbors, or just anyone in their empire. This law makes people respect everyone in their empire, especially since they're on the same side.
For our final argument, slaves had more rights than any other empire at the time. For example, although Babylonians kept slaves, they also had rights. Slaves could marry other people, status, starting businesses, and purchasing their freedom. They were protected from mistreatment. For example, a law that showed this is Law 175. States that if a slave or a state slave marries a free man's daughter, and children are born of the slave, the free man has no rights to enslave the children. That shows that Hammurabi cared for all his people, even his slaves, unlike the other empires of the time. Like majority of parents are strict when it comes to their kids, like Hammurabi was strict with his people because they only want the best for the kids, just like Hammurabi only wanted the best for his people.
Your friend. Your argument was that the laws were made by the gods. Am I correct?
Yes.
I have a question. If the gods made the laws, why are some of them so harsh? Back to my argument, law number 12. If a builder builds a house and it falls and kills the person who owns the house, they get put to death. Why would the gods want to punish someone who had no intention of killing?
Ask them.
Shut up.
Annihilate. You were talking about the slaves, right? On law number 14, if a male slave master says you're not his master, that slaves will get, the slave that said that he's not your master will get his ear cut off. The law also says that masters could keep their slaves even if they try to purchase their freedom.
Okay, so Joel stated a law that says if a man builds the house, and I think if it falls down and kills the man, the man that built the house is gonna get punished. But if the man built a sturdy house, then why would it fall down? So this is fair because the man should have built a sturdy house. So that means that he killed the man because he doesn't know how to build a house, so he shouldn't have built the house.
What about a natural disaster?
A natural disaster?
Exactly.
That
what
wouldn't
about
happen.
That wouldn't happen because the Babylonian Empire was built in a place that was okay. So that means that you killed the man because if you didn't build a sturdy house, it would have never fall down.
Jadier, you said that the rules were unfair to women, but back in the day, women could not own houses or land. It would all go to their husbands, and if they owned money, they couldn't even own money for themselves. So basically, they were just slaves to their husband until they died. And then, in Hammurabi's code, you can own your own money, you could own your own land and your own properties as a woman, and you could divorce if a good reason was presented to Hammurabi or a judge. So that's why Hammurabi's code was fair, because this is in 2023 time, this is back in back in that era. So it was just, the rules were more fair to women in that empire. If you ask me, Hammurabi's code
gave the women the most rights in that time.
So imagine you're a mill slave. And then one day you wake up and say, hey, I don't want to be a slave no more. So you decide to walk to your master and say, you're not my master and I'm not your slave. If you let me walk out that door, you will never see me again. So then, when you're ready to walk out, you're like, I'm free. Never again. I never have to be a slave no more. Sure, there's problems, but I'll figure them out. And suddenly behind you, you're pinned down. And who is it? Your slave master. Then you ask your slave master, what are you doing? He doesn't give you an answer. He just starts naming a law, which you broke. He said, number 14, if a male slave says to his master, you're not my master anymore, that slave shall get his ear cut off. And it's not like you said it in a mean way. You said it nicely as possibly you could. Hey, I want to be free. I don't want to be your slave no more. Not only he said that, he also has a sharp weapon to cut your ear off. So then you beg him to stop. Please don't do this. This is crazy. And suddenly, everything goes dark. You are on the floor still, but your hands are bloody. Then you see something on the floor with you. Then you try to feel one of your ears, make sure they're both intact. Then you notice one of your ears is gone. He cut off your ear. You're in shell shock, so you didn't even notice that. Was it? What was it? He told you, get back to work. And if you ever say that ever again, you'll lose that other ear. Not only you're scared, but you're not even free. He didn't let you go. So then you realize, this isn't fair. So when you try to escape, unlegally, there's still a law made for you not to escape. But if you even get caught, you'll die. So then you'll realize you're kind of trapped in a situation that you don't want to be in. So either, and they didn't have the medical resources to take care of that wound. So either you die of an infection, you're still working as a slave, or, oh, actually, no, there is no work. You just die. You realize, I'm stuck in a situation with no way out.
Only a fool would think Hammurabi's code is unfair at this point. Oh God. Before the god sent him, the people of this region were lost and scared. Hammurabi's code answered their prayers by bringing everyone together and giving them a clear plan that pushed their empire to greatness for many years. It protected the weak in family, injury, and property disputes. There was nothing like this at the time, and the alternative would have been worse. His people could have left if they wanted to, but they didn't, because they knew that Hammurabi's empire was the fairest empire they could have been at this time.
Good afternoon. Today our team will be taking you back in time to help you visualize just how fair these laws actually were. Although these laws were fair for many reasons, I would like to state just one for this speech. And that argument today will, despite the fact that there may be some laws that are harsh, how do you think the Hammurabi's empire strived for so long, stayed in structure, and stayed united for so long? So today, we as a team are here to help and show you the importance of fair and not uneven in the Hammurabi's code.
Imagine a world where one simple mistake could cost your life or a loved one's. Hammurabi's code of laws subjected innocent people to such unjust consequences. Picture this: your father, a hard-working construction worker, built a house for a client, but tragically, the house collapses and kills the owner's son. Suddenly, you are sentenced to execution for an honest mistake made by a family member. It's unimaginable, isn't it? Today, if you were to mention this law to someone uneducated on Hammurabi's code of laws, they would think you're insane. That's why we are here to present you with undeniable evidence of the sheer unfairness of Hammurabi's code.
Hammurabi's code was enforced with harsh punishments that stopped people from committing the crimes. This code also provided a sense of justice for people, and they were held accountable for their actions. In Hammurabi's code, one of the laws state, if a man lies in a court case involving a death sentence, he shall be put to death. If you were accused of killing someone, how would you feel? I know I would want justice to be served and for the person to face the consequences for their actions. Luckily for you, they would, since Hammurabi's code protected you from such crimes.
Hammurabi's code of laws was fair since it was based on religion. Religion teach them moral behavior. It gave them hope and it motivates them to a positive change. According to Hammurabi, these laws came from Shamash, the god of sun. The Bible, this is very similar to the Bible, and the Ten Commandments, in which tells us what we can and can't do. For example, thou shalt not commit impure acts. And if we decide to ignore this or do the opposite, we will miss out on godly wisdom.
Another reason why Hammurabi's code is fair is because the crime committed is equal to the punishment given. For example, Law 197 of the Hammurabi Code states, if one man breaks another man's bone, then they shall break his bone. Put yourself in the victim's shoes. If someone came up to you and broke your bone, how would you feel? Unjust, like you can't do anything about it, right? That's why his bone should break as well. Although you may think a better consequence would be going to jail or paying a fine, it really wouldn't be, because he's a responsibility of all these nearly advanced humans who have no structure, order, or common sense. So how would you put order, structure, and common sense into them? By making them afraid of the consequence. Also, I know if I did something as horrible as that, then I should be punished.
For our first argument, my team agreed that the laws were unfair because some of them were too harsh and absurd for giving people such consequences for their actions. We're convinced that they were too harsh and absurd because as a clear example, we got Law 192, which says, if a son of a paramour or a prostitute say to his adopted father or mother, you are not my father, or you are not my mother, his thumb should be cut off. If you think about it, this law is irrational. Visualize that your adopted father or mother have been treating you real bad, or like you don't belong to their family. So that's why you have grudge and resentment in your heart against him or her. And you want to be with your people, with the ones who really love you. But now you just got your thumb cut off for trying to express your feelings. This leads us to demonstrate that Hammurabi's laws were unfair because they allow no explanation from the accused person. There's Law 147. If she has not borne him children, then her mistress may sell her for money. Money. Is she some kind of making children machine? I don't think so. Why if she can have children then? Is she just going to keep on getting sold? Well, we have one simple answer for these questions. They were unfair.
I feel like everyone should know that Hammurabi's Code of Laws is a prime example of how a legal system can be biased and unfair. For instance, if a man knocks out the teeth of another man from his equal social class, his teeth shall be knocked out. But if a man from a higher social class does it to a man of a lower social class, then he would just get off with a fine. Such law is unacceptable as it favors individuals from a higher social class over those of a lower social class. The law should treat everyone equally, regardless their social class. With that, I would like to conclude my argument and leave you thinking, what equality do you think of when you look at Hammurabi's laws?
We all know or should know that sexism was and still is a huge issue that society faces. It is said that Babylon treated their women fairly, but if the Code of Hammurabi clearly discriminated against women, treated them more harshly simply because they were women, how is that fair? The code made it clear that men and women had different rights in their communities, with women being seen as property of their husbands and fathers. An example of this would be Law 147 that states, if she has not borne him children, her mistress may sell her for money, which we already stated, but this view had This view they had on women is shown in many laws that restricted their freedom and choices. The code was also imposed severely. One example of this is Law 129. If a man's wife be surprised in very act of wrongdoing in an act of sexual misconduct with another man, she shall be put to death. Why should she be put to death and not the man she was sleeping with? This is unfair because either way, they were both in the bedroom. They were both having the same actions. They even have rules about how women should look and act. Why should they have to be displayed as if they were objects? This is unfair and truly sexist. The cultural bias in cases of divorce, marriage, and adultery. Do you really think that that is fair? If you do.
According to Law 209 and 210, although you may believe Hammurabi's codes were sexist, they simply were perfect for someone who did not know the difference between right or wrong. Back in 1750 and 1792 BCE, no man nor woman knew the difference between right or wrong. Clearly, if you ask someone from our society now a question about Hammurabi's codes, they wouldn't, and they don't know the full story or the true meaning to those laws, they would think the laws are absurd. But in the end, we simply cannot compare nearly advanced humans to humans now. Because back then, do you think that there were feminists or that the term gender inequality existed? Right. Which is why we are unfit to talk about it.
Maria, you said that these laws were irrational, but I disagree. Like I said earlier, although you may think jail or a fine are better consequences, they're not. For example, one of Hammurabi's most famous laws, an eye for an eye. Maria, are you telling me that if someone took out your eye, you would be okay with it? No, you wouldn't. You would want their eye to be taken out. You guys are complaining about how harsh and how unfair they are, but think about yourself. I know majority of you wouldn't let them get away with taking out your eye, so why are you arguing that they should have these so-called fair consequences? Back then, they had no idea about what's fair or what's wrong. Obviously now, society is more advanced, so if you think they're unfair, so you would think they're unfair. But do you think that they had common sense back then? No, they didn't.
How the fair side had previously mentioned that these laws, the way they treated people was fair, I disagree. The laws make no sense and they were so unfair and so unequal to the way they compared to men. In Law 210, if the mother dies, a daughter shall be put to death. Why? Just because your mother dies, I may understand that you may go through a lot of pain and that you should die just because there's nobody to take care of you. I don't think so. It's really, what if it happened to you? Would you like to die just because your mother did and you have no future just because your mother did? I don't think so. Also, in Law 132, it mentions that if a finger is pointed to a woman sleeping with, but isn't caught sleeping with another man, she has to jump the river for her husband. Why doesn't the man she was sleeping with get consequences, but he can go sleep with whoever? So again, I'm gonna ask a question. Do fair side, do you think it's fair? Do you think it's okay? Would it happen to you? Would you want to jump the river? I don't think so. So this is what I think, and that's why my side makes this unfair.
Eileen had previously mentioned that punishment were equivalent to the crime. I'm telling the fair side, the judges, and your whole entire team, and more importantly, Eileen, that these crimes and punishments were everything in the synonyms to unfair and unequal. In law number 193, it says that if a child who was adopted leaves their adoptive parents' home and goes with their biological parents, his eyes have to be taken out of his head. Do you want your eyes to be pulled out your face? I'm asking all of you. I know you can reply back. Do you want your eyes to be taken out your face for going to your biological father's home? I'm sure you do not. Anyways, you can get your hands cut off for giving the wrong haircut. I'm sorry, Devin, does your barber who gives the wrong haircut to you, if he gave you a messed up shape up and you have hair, I'm sure you could grow it back, correct? If he gave you the messed up hairline, would you feel okay with your favorite barber getting his hands cut off just because he gave you a messed up hairline? Exactly. So also, I'd like to bring up, like how Maria brought up, about how women, if she could not give birth to a kid to her husband, her mistress may sell her. Let's just put out there that women being born without enough eggs to give birth had been existed since the start of time. So just because she cannot produce a child, she'd have to be put to death. That is not fair, equal at all. You had talked about sexism and how sex has nothing to do with it, or not sex like that. I'm talking about the gender. If their gender has not much to do with it because gender stuff didn't matter then, well, guess what? I'm telling you that it may not have mattered, but right now it matters because we have a voice to use and we can use it now. Sorry, I have to conclude it now. So, Eileen, you're telling me that these punishments were fair? No. Fair side. You're telling me these punishments were fair? No. So, I'm here to conclude my speech with telling you that nothing was fair.
Ready? In conclusion, when you think of fair, you think about equality, equal rules, equal justice, etc. One thing that is certain is Hammurabi practiced equality very well. For example, one rule states, if a man knocks out the teeth of his equal, his teeth shall be knocked. This shows Hammurabi believes in equality, fairness, and the phrase an eye for an eye. Our opponents claim his rules are unfair, but they were made for a purpose, thus stating Hammurabi's code was made for protection and order in an environment that was not surrounded or taught commandment. Yes, the empire fell twice, but they were strong enough to rebuild his empire back up again, and it lasted more than 50 years. And because of this, his legacy lived on. He made a memorable impact with his codes, along with laws, and even had an influence on the laws created today. Thank you.
In today's discussion, it is clear that Hammurabi's code of laws were criticized for its perceived inequality towards different social classes and genders, as well as its harsh and irrational penalties for certain actions. These aspects highlight the evident disparity within the legal system. Therefore, our team firmly believes that Hammurabi's code of laws were inherently unjust.
Imagine hearing someone saying that the Hammurabi laws were unfair. Clearly, that person knows nothing about the Babylonian Empire. It was the most powerful empire in the ancient world, and none of this could have happened without his famous code of law. These people were safer than ever before, and were worried constantly about being invaded and attacked. Today, our group will prove that his law was not only fair, but allowed everyone to focus on bigger and better things over their overall quality of life.
Imagine you build a house that took you months working every single day to make. You put your work, sweat, and tears into this house. You look at it with pride as people walk by and stare at it in awe at how beautiful and sturdy it is. Then one day, you sell it to a nice family. A month later, you hear a knock at your door, and when you open it, the government is here to take away your kids to be killed. You scream in agony and find out that your house that you built collapsed on the kids of the family you built it for. Anyone with a heart can clearly see that both you and especially your kids don't deserve this. If you think this is bad, this was just one of the many rules that Hammurabi has created. Today, my team is going to further expose how unkind, inconsiderate, and disrespectful Hammurabi's laws were.
The laws treated people unfairly based on their age, gender, and or social class. For example, law, if a doctor killed a rich patient, he would have his hands cut off, but if he killed an enslaved person, he would only pay a fine. This proves that by just your title and money, people would still get tortured depending on their financial status. This is clearly unfair because if a doctor makes a mistake, his punishment is not dependent on his mistake alone. It is also dependent on the social status of the patient. Imagine if a surgeon today makes a mistake on the homeless man, has to pay a fine. Yet another one makes a mistake and on a rich celebrity and has their hands cut off. Would that seem fair to you?
The punishment were ways too harsh for the criminal's commitment. For example, Law 282. If a slave says to his master, "You are not my master," his master shall cut off his ear. This is unfair because it shows how back then they each had a title and depended on your title. You get treated. If you were poor, you would get treated poorly without respect.
The laws are unfair because it's caused pain and suffering to his people. Evidence. For example, law number 195. If a son strikes his father, his hand shall be cut off. This is unfair because it shows that the laws Hammurabi has made also cause the death of others and image being in their shoes. In an empire like this, for centuries, and think about it, having to go through this every single day and end up dying due to these laws, that wouldn't be fair at all. Having your life taken away from you just because of how harsh these laws were back in the day.
His laws were fair because it gave justice to people who committed crimes and made it fair to all people. For example, Law 8 states that if a man destroys an eye of another man, his eye shall be taken out. This clearly shows that Hammurabi's code protected and gave justice to people who committed the crime. And it was a message to everyone in the land that negative behaviors would not be tolerated.
The law protected families and ended their property problems and was designed to ensure justice and restore property to those who have been wronged by establishing clear guidance and punishment. The code sought them maintain order and discourage committing crimes.
Hammurabi wanted to follow his laws because they were right, not just because soldiers were making them obey, also because he wanted his whole empire to follow the same rules and same laws and rules. So Hammurabi wrote down all of the laws because they were fair.
Hammurabi code was fair because the laws applied to people's actions. Put yourself in their shoes. If you were one of those people that lived under Hammurabi's rules and you had no choice but to follow these specific rules, how would you feel if you were one of those people who got tortured for something very dumb? These actions were not as the army or government made it seem. Like, this showed how effective it was Hammurabi's empire. Just because people do things so tiny does not mean they get to lose their lives. It may be against Hammurabi's code of laws, but to suffer in the pain of others, to suffer in sorrow, these laws were way too strict for the people's doings.
The laws made the empire better in different ways. He wanted them to follow his rules. Think about it. Hammurabi's 282 laws are completely crazy and life-threatening. At this point, you should know that it's completely unfair. Why should Hammurabi's people shall suffer for little things just because it made to put others in their place? All Hammurabi is doing is hurting their loved ones by putting them having to lose someone. These laws cannot just make the empire better. All it's doing is draining out the population. If people cannot do what they desire and or wish to accomplish, what's the point of having these laws? Does it really need to be that harsh?
Liana, you stated that the codes were unfair because if somebody built a house for somebody and it fell on their kids would be taken away and killed. That's fair because they were lazy that day and didn't want to work, so they built the house lazy.
So Kenny, you stated that the laws do treat people with give people the smallest amount of treatment, but equal doesn't always mean fair. Think about it. If there was one kid in a wheelchair and the other kids in the wheelchair should take the elevator and the kids should take the stairs, is this equal? No, but anyone with a brain should still see that is fair. Hammurabi's code did just that by giving everyone what they needed to be successful.
At this point, I don't know one person in this room who would want to change the laws we have today.
Who would want to be put to death for any little thing? Each and every one of us is in this room has made mistakes. No one is perfect, including Hammurabi and his life. His life, we are. Yeah? His life. Why you say this? His lives were both cruel and initials. Students study the past in order to make better decisions for the future. Well, students study this too, and as we can clearly see, have decided to do away with extreme punishment, like death for both invading and in some cases violent crimes. Hammurabi's code did not temporarily help to right an empire, but at what cost?
Overall, the city of Babylon had the biggest empire in the world, and Hammurabi could have not achieved that without his code of laws. And your team had the guts and the confidence to try to look at the little things, but you guys didn't look at the things that were helpful to the empire. Like it was a safe place and a good community.